Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
I would take it right away. I would have it tomorrow.
The call to expand COVID booster shots to all BC seniors. And how effective have the province's vaccine mandates really been? Plus,
it only takes once and then you're done, and then you always reserve.
Taking no chances, why long weekend travel prep looked a lot different this time around.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. As of this week, a third COVID shot is making its way through BC long-term care and assisted living facilities. But as Belle Puri tells us, there's concern about how long seniors who don't live in care will have to wait.
At 74 years old, Peter Cassell is all for vaccines, first, second, and third dose.
I would take it right away. I would have it tomorrow.
Older adults continue to be among the hardest hit by the COVID-19 pandemic. Right now, all of the fully vaccinated people dying in BC from the virus are over 60 years old. The majority are over 80.
I would like to see as many people vaccinated with the booster shot as possible and very quickly, because we are hearing more and more that possibly the effectiveness of even the double vax might be waning.
Despite recent deaths, data from the BC Centre for Disease Control shows no spike in fully vaccinated people over 80 getting COVID. But for those who do get it, the risk remains very real.
I think that third dose in long-term care makes an absolute sense right now, because those are our frailest of our frail. I do hope, though, that very soon, and I'm hoping within the next few weeks, there'll be that knowledge that there are a lot of people who are at that same level of frailty who are still living in their own homes.
A sampling across the country shows Nova Scotia, Ontario, and Manitoba have prioritized vulnerable populations in care homes for a third vaccine. Alberta has expanded eligibility to include everyone over the age of 75 and First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people over 65. In BC, a third dose of the vaccine is available for seniors, but only those who live in long-term care or assisted living facilities. Provincial health officials say living in group settings is risky. They'll have more to say about everyone else over 65 in the weeks to come. BC's top doctor says the situation among elders living in the community is being monitored.
Are we seeing breakthrough? And the answer is not a lot yet, but we do need to pay attention to that.
Most seniors see boosters as a necessary precaution.
Well, I'm well over 65 and I would like to have it right now.
I do think it should eventually be everyone over 65, but right now we need to take care of those people that are in the long-term care.
I think everybody should get it.
For now, it seems unclear who will be included if and when the province decides to expand its booster shot eligibility.
Bring it on. If there's a fourth one or fifth one, I want to stay on this earth as long as possible.
Belle Puri, CBC News, White Rock.
BC's mask mandate in public indoor spaces is being expanded. Kids 5 and older will soon be required to wear masks inside public places. The current requirement is for kids 12 and up. It's not clear when the change will take effect, but we are expecting more details next week. ICBC and TransLink are joining the list of large BC employers requiring their workers to be vaccinated. At TransLink, the policy will apply to 8,300 workers, including those at Coast Mountain Bus Company, BC Rapid Transit Company, and the Transit Police, saying more passengers are returning to public transit. It has set a deadline for the end of November. ICBC will need to see proof of vaccination for its 5,700 employees slightly sooner, by November 15th. A restaurant in Hope is being fined $100 a day for refusing to check vaccine passports. Raleigh's restaurant had its business license suspended yesterday and continues to serve customers today. Fraser Health ordered the closure after complaints. The City of Hope has suspended the restaurant license for 6 months and is dishing out the fine each day they open. If the restaurant starts checking customers' vaccination status, Fraser Health says it will drop the order to close. And in Kelowna, Interior Health has ordered a restaurant to close because it, too, has not been checking customers' vaccination status. Renegade Restaurant is locked tight today for violating the health order. An investigation was triggered because of complaints. Well, 3 Uber drivers say they've been fired for refusing passengers who wouldn't wear masks or follow other pandemic safety measures. The drivers say the firings came after alleged conflicts with a small number of passengers who then left poor reviews. In one case, a passenger threatened a driver over wearing a mask, and the driver says he had to call police. A complaint has been filed through the Labor Relations Board.
Certainly we know a lot of frontline workers have had a lot of anxiety around bringing when the vaccine card has come in place. And so my message is clear to all businesses. Please support your workers through this challenging time.
The United Food and Commercial Workers International Union has taken on the complaint on behalf of the drivers. The drivers hope their jobs will be back and they'll be compensated for lost wages. There's anger and misinformation are reasons why parts of northern BC have the lowest vaccination rates in the province. And an MLA in the region is not backing down when it comes to the importance of getting the jab.
I haven't wavered since day one, and nor will I, that we need to work together. We need to get people vaccinated. If we ever want to get back to some form of normalcy through this, if we want to remove restrictions, we need to get people vaccinated. We need people healthy.
The RCMP is investigating a death threat against Bernier made online ahead of a protest. The MLA says some people living in the Peace ruffle at health mandates and what they see as government interference, and adds that Alberta has a large influence in the region, not only because of the oil and gas industry, but also because of people's affinity with conservative politics. A BC Supreme Court judge has granted another temporary injunction at the Ferry Creek watershed on Vancouver Island. Last month, a judge ruled the injunction against an old-growth logging blockade there would end on September 27th. The judge cited a substantial infringement of civil liberties at the site by the RCMP. Logging company Teal Jones filed to appeal the decision. The interim injunction will last until the judgment on that appeal is rendered. A court date for that has been set for November 15th. Charges have been laid against a 22-year-old listed as one of the VPD's top 6 gang members posing a risk to public safety. Akin Anigbo was wanted in BC for multiple outstanding warrants, accused of breaching his probation and assault. Vancouver police say at the time of his arrest, Anigbo had a rifle, a handgun, and ammunition in his possession. He's now charged with 4 new firearms offenses and will stay in jail until his next court date. A 21-year-old man accused of assaulting a woman at a bus stop yesterday in East Vancouver has been arrested. The VPD says the suspect approached the victim as she was waiting for a bus near Knight Street and East 57th Avenue. He then propositioned her for sex. She refused, and he allegedly kicked her from behind and knocked her to the ground. He was arrested earlier today after a security guard at Pacific Centre Mall recognized him and called police. Well, according to new report, BC whale watching and fishing boats are consistently getting too close to endangered southern resident killer whales. The report from Strait Watch shows between 2018 and 2020, boats routinely breached the 400-meter legal buffer around the whales, and that Canadian enforcement around the orcas is far below the level of U.S. enforcement. Activists want the federal government to ramp up enforcement and fines against boaters who get too close. Strait Watch is a monitoring organization that works in the waters near Vancouver Island. And a Victoria dog owner has a painful reminder for other pet owners after the family pet was jabbed in the bottom by a deer's antler.
I just heard a yelp, and then she came running, whimpering up the stairs up onto our deck and into the house. And I noticed the blood dripping onto the ground.
The Corgi cross named Miss Porkchop likely startled the black-tailed buck when she was out in the yard on Monday. Conservation officers say wildlife needs space from humans and pets during mating season and when newborn fawns are around. Urban deer are a common sight in the Gordon Head neighborhood of Victoria. Miss Porkchop is recovering but remains wary of her backyard after the painful encounter. And if you're near Commercial Drive and have a sinking feeling, well, you're not alone. Flooding from a ruptured water main has opened a sinkhole that nearly swallowed 2 trucks. The rupture occurred last night near Commercial and Powell Street. Water poured into the streets and several businesses. Firefighters helped to divert the water. Fortunately, no one was hurt and there are no safety concerns. Powell Street is open while city crews work on repairs. Meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe joins us now with the forecast. And Joe, I hope that this long weekend is going to bring much of what we saw today.
It will. I'm very pleased to report that we've got more of this stunning Friday in the forecast, that we do have to get through a Saturday, and it's quite a Saturday. But tonight, the skies are clear, temperatures are crisp, but it has been a gorgeous Friday. Tomorrow, I am tracking that system that we've been watching all week, but I do want to let you know that Environment Canada has issued special weather statements now for the mountain passes for snow. We were watching that system track across to the interior earlier this week, and there was some concern. It does look like that time wind will be tomorrow night into Sunday morning, and many of us are possibly traveling to visit family and friends this weekend. So heads up, winter driving conditions in place Saturday night into Sunday morning. And that's the same system that will bring a full day of rain for tomorrow. And then as that front rolls through, very gusty winds Sunday before we get back to some of this weather. So Sunday and Monday looking glorious. I do want to time that system out, talk about how much rain we're expected, the peak of those winds. We'll chat more snow, which I know you always love, Anita, coming up in a bit.
Of course. Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
Well, volunteers at the Union Gospel Mission are serving up 1,400 hearty meals to gobble up this Thanksgiving. They have been carving turkeys since this morning and will continue cooking throughout the long weekend. The UGM plans to serve up those 1,400 meals to people experiencing homelessness, poverty, and addiction. The meal includes all the fixings: turkey, mashed potatoes, gravy, vegetables, cranberry sauce, and of course, pie. Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. I'm your host, Anita Bathe. And if you're not already doing so, please know that you can watch our program live on our free app. It's called CBC Gem. We're also on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Well, for the first time in a while, the Public Health Agency of Canada is releasing some good news. New modeling shows the fourth wave is receding, but we aren't out of the woods just yet. Next. Well, craft beer has become a big thing in Nova Scotia, but those in the business are hoping the industry will grow even more. Every year, the Craft Brewers Association of Nova Scotia holds a community that draws people from all over every corner of the province. Colleen Jones gives us a sip of how they craft the beer they call Together We Brew.
They've come to the church to not pray, but talk about beer. This is the annual meeting of the Beer Minds, and as far as annual meetings go, it might be the best ever. The brewers come from Tatamagouche to Cape Breton and Parsbro and all points in between. Fred Peters and his son John run Hilltop Hops Brewhouse in Brooklyn.
We're just a small little brewery, and to see something this size, it's really educational.
But they came here to learn more. What they've all come together for is to make one beer.
Right here, behind Anthony.
It's called Together We Brew. 75 cents from every sale goes back into growing the industry province-wide.
We've got a lot of kind of big global players, and they do kind of dominate the landscape. And so when we get together and you know, put our heads and, you know, collective efforts together, it really does help to boost the awareness of the industry and, you know, the awareness of the local aspect and the fact that, you know, we're boosting local economies in small towns across the province.
While the global beer giant still dominates sales, the craft beer industry keeps chipping away at the market share.
Even though beer sales at the NSLC have been going down, trending down over the last little while, craft brew beer sales has been trending up. So we see that as Nova Scotians and throughout the rest of Canada, people are supporting local, they're supporting their community beer and their community breweries.
We're all here because this is just what we love to do on a daily basis.
That's Steve Crane. He's the head brewer at the Church Brewery. This day isn't just about making Together We Brew, which sounds like an interesting recipe.
Kind of a Frankenstein IPA, I'll call it, because at each stage we're asking them quiz questions and they get to choose what grains and hops and ingredients go into the beer.
They don't just brew together, they share trade secrets. That's rare. Competitors helping each other so that as an industry, they get bigger.
What are people doing? How did they get there? Well, that beer was fantastic. What did you do? And then we can start amalgamating these ideas together into really strengthening the Nova Scotia brewing industry as a whole. And that's the goal with this style of event and with the Together We Brew, is to let's bring focus to how great our local industry is and how great people in our province are making these products that we've gotten from America and Belgium for years. We're now doing it locally, and we're now doing it just as good, if not better.
Colleen Jones, CBC News, Wolfville.
The Public Health Agency of Canada has released modeling data that shows something we have rarely seen in this pandemic. Good news. Nationally, the rate of new infections is dropping. But as Travis Dunraj explains, if transmission were to increase by just 15%, the progress made so far won't last.
The efforts we've made.
Canada's top doctor says nationally we may be turning the corner on COVID-19, but
the curve is just bending. And if you're in some of the provinces in the middle of the country, you need to be really, really precautionary.
in provinces like Saskatchewan and Alberta, vaccine hesitancy remains a major issue, a concern for Dr. Theresa Tam, who was also blunt in her assessment of those provinces for easing restrictions too quickly during the summer.
I would hope that if with this wave, that everyone has taken this to heart and that things can be really serious.
Despite that warning, Saskatchewan is not putting limits on Thanksgiving gatherings.
You can't just lift all other restrictions and rely on vaccination of an insufficient proportion of your population to drive cases down. And that's exactly what we're seeing right now in Saskatchewan and Alberta.
Infectious diseases experts say the gains made so far are fragile.
We have the winter coming up, so that's part of the reason why I think that we need to be prepared for potentially another surge. But I think in other parts of the country, they're seeing that Delta tends to find places that are susceptible to infection.
Overall, today's modeling was good news. Over 82% of eligible Canadians are now fully vaccinated. Nationally, case counts are leveling off. Still, many prepping for turkey and pumpkin feasts are making sure COVID considerations are also on the menu.
We're all getting tested ahead of time, and we're going to try and eat outside and try and, use the precautions that we can.
And according to experts, that is the right approach. Where gatherings are allowed, masks, social distancing, and small groups all need to be a reality for yet another holiday-long weekend during a pandemic that isn't behind us just yet. Travis Dunraj, CBC News, Ottawa.
We have new questions tonight about another case of sexual assault involving a senior member of the Canadian Armed Forces. As Ashley Burke explains, after CBC News went looking for answers, the federal government launched a review in the middle of a deepening crisis.
A review now underway at CFB Halifax into what went wrong. Who allowed Navy Commander Danny Croucher, accused of sexual misconduct, to leave the military without consequences and return to work in June at this exact same Navy base, but this time as a civilian.
Well, my reaction is, again? I mean, it shows such a lack of social intelligence, common sense, certainly awareness.
In June 2020, the military removed Croucher from his job as the head of the Navy Warfare School. Sources say he faced an investigation into allegations of inappropriate and hurtful comments said to be sexual in nature, and wrongdoing was found. Croucher was expected to be kicked out of the Navy, the sources said, but instead, the military granted him a voluntary release.
Somebody facilitated a release on request as opposed to a compulsory release as a result of somebody, in fact, who failed in his duty. In other words, somebody got a free pass.
The review is now probing if the military broke or flouted its own rules by allowing Croucher to avoid consequences for misconduct.
It shows clearly that we need to review how the military conducts investigations, how disciplinary issues are being investigated and punished.
This all comes on the same week the military issued an apology for its handling of Major General Peter Dawes' case. Amid another round of public backlash, the forces pulled Daw from his new job on the sexual misconduct file. He had quietly returned to work earlier this month after being put on leave following a CBC News report revealing he wrote a positive reference letter for a convicted sex offender.
I was stunned and dismayed.
The Prime Minister and his deputy criticized the military for its insensitive handling of the case.
This shows they simply still don't get it. We have an awful lot of work to do. We know that.
Buying refurbished electronics can be good for the environment and also easier on your wallet. But with the growing popularity of online marketplaces, there are also a lot of buyers experiencing remorse. Asha Tomlinson is looking into testing products listed on one of Canada's biggest names in retail, Best Buy.
So you'd go to turn it on and you'd get like nothing. You just get the plug sign come on the screen.
This refurbished iPad was a birthday gift from Joanne Nixon's partner, Richard. He bought it on Best Buy's online marketplace. But months later, it just stopped working.
Then we went to Best Buy in person and we talked to people that worked in the store and they all said, oh, never buy on Marketplace. Big mistake, big mistake. It's third-party sellers and you never know what you're getting. We were pretty pissed off.
We've heard similar complaints from many Canadians. Thing is, Best Buy makes promises on its website that their refurbished products are grade A and like new. We put that to the test, shopped on their site, bought 12 refurbished devices from third-party sellers, and asked industry experts to weigh in.
Do you think that there were proper checks and balances in place then?
I think that people are selling these devices hoping that customers aren't going to notice.
The result? 5 devices had either cosmetic or functionality issues, like these scratches on this phone or the loose screen on this tablet.
The best way to demonstrate that is to press right here.
I hear it.
We went into 5 Best Buys with hidden cameras to see what employees would say about our issues. Most warned us to steer clear of refurbished items on their marketplace.
I personally don't buy from there because you don't know what you're buying, right?
Anything that says refurbished on the product, don't do it.
Best Buy says our investigation prompted another round of scrutiny. They say they're training staff and developing better product descriptions online so customers know exactly what they're getting. Meantime, we tell Best Buy about Nixon's case. They've now agreed to give her a new iPad. Asha Tomlinson, CBC News, Toronto.
Tune in tonight as CBC Marketplace takes hidden cameras inside Best Buy stores to hear what employees have to say about third-party sellers and to hear the full results of the team's investigation. That's at 8 p.m. tonight on CBC Television. ISIS militants in Afghanistan are claiming responsibility for a bombing at a Shia mosque during Friday prayers. As Susan Ormiston tells us, it's the latest in a rash of attacks against Muslim religious minorities in the country. And a warning, some of the images in this report may be disturbing to viewers.
Afghans are watching with increasing alarm. This is the 3rd deadly attack in a week and by far the worst since the U.S. forces left this country just over a month ago. A suicide bomber targeted a Shia mosque in Kunduz in the north. It was packed for Friday prayers. About 1:30 local time, the blast tore through the interior and the hundreds of people praying. A man inside that mosque described the carnage. What I saw was like the end of the world, saying he couldn't even count the number of dead bodies that he'd transferred in his vehicle because there was no ambulance. The Taliban said it was sending in special forces to the area. Casualty numbers not confirmed, but according to the Taliban, more than 100 are dead or injured. ISIS-K has claimed responsibility, continuing a pattern of attacking Afghanistan's Shia minority. The UN said tonight that this latest bombing shows an overall disturbing trend, a pattern of violence here. Just last Sunday in Kabul, a suicide bomber killed 8, mourning the death of a prominent Taliban family member. And that night, Taliban leaders gathered at a hospital to visit the wounded, the next day launching an attack on an ISIS case cell in the city. One of the reasons some Afghans supported the Taliban's takeover is they believed it would control the violence. And after promising it would contain internal terrorism, it seems to be struggling with that threat inside its borders. Susan Ormiston, CBC News, Kabul.
The Thanksgiving long weekend is here. You are looking at a live shot tonight over onto the North Shore. Coming up, ferry lineups and traffic jams. Travelers planned ahead this time around. We'll have all of that for you coming up.
Hours of the threat, fresh turkeys that could not have been tampered with, had been delivered to Safeway and to customers. A turkey consultant was there to reassure, but customers generally seemed more annoyed than concerned.
It's crazy. What a waste. I'm going to buy a turkey regardless. It's not going to make me buy a turkey, but it's not going to make me not buy a turkey either.
The letter had been sent to media outlets. It was titled Death on the Menu, said turkeys at Safeway, Save On Foods and IGA had been poisoned. Murder, it said, will beget murder, and those participating in unthinking carnage will soon be examining the consequences of their actions, preferably around an open grave. It had happened before, but then it was the Christmas bird in 1994. Thousands of turkeys were pulled off the shelf. But since then, stores have been much more cautious.
Since the turkey scare of 1994, we have increased security precautions in the stores.
No poisons were ever found in the birds in the 1994 case, and Vancouver police say they have no specific suspects. What's more, police are not sure the two threats are even connected.
You can see down there where there's quite a few rapids. The water gets fairly shallow and it gets quite bumpy.
Heidi Lander is talking about tackling the Campbell River, a challenge for a kayak, downright dangerous in a canoe. But there's no kayak here, no canoe. Lander and her group are going down the Campbell in wetsuits.
Oh, this is tight.
Sound crazy? Maybe it is, but a few folks in Campbell River have been doing it for years. Lander will take groups of people who stay at her April Point Lodge on nearby Quadra Island.
When you get out of here, your eyes will be about this big.
It all started about 10 years ago when some Department of Fisheries people floated down the Campbell in an effort to count the number of spawning salmon. Today, salmon swimming is a growing autumn pastime.
And the real wonder of it for me is that every time you swim the river, you see something different. If you're 6 feet over from where you were last time, or if the river is a little higher or a little lower, the whole world under there is altered.
They get in downstream from where the salmon actually spawn. The water depth is from 1 to 15 feet. The idea is simply to float and not disturb the fish. Once you're in, the idea is simply to stay alive.
If it's the first time to put a suit on, it's the first time with a snorkel in your mouth, you're in this river that's flowing the way it's going, you can't really fight it. There's a lot of components that can kind of combine to work against you. If you panic easily, or if you tend to get short of breath or feel claustrophobic, then it can be a problem, and it's not something you should consider, lightly.
The salmon swimming season is just about over for this year. Soon, the fall rains will muddy the waters and the spawning fish will die. But just like the Chinook and coho, there will be people who return to the river next year.
Here are some of the stories we're following tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
I would like to see as many people vaccinated with the booster shot as possible, and very quickly.
There are growing calls for BC to expand booster shots to seniors who don't live in long-term care or assisted living facilities. Right now, all of the fully vaccinated British Columbians dying from COVID are over the age of 60. The majority, though, are over 80. Surrey-based logging company Teal Jones has been granted a temporary injunction against protesters at the Ferry Creek watershed on Vancouver Island. The protesters have been there for more than a year against the logging of old-growth forests. This afternoon's development comes after a judge recently said the injunction wouldn't be renewed because of the actions of the RCMP. Seniors are at greater risk of serious illness from COVID. Now, I want to bring in our Justin McElroy, who's been taking a closer look at overall ICU rates for vaccinated and unvaccinated patients. Justin, what are you seeing?
Yeah, Anita, while deaths and hospitalizations are rising in British Columbia, or at least have over the past month and a half, the story of rates for vaccinated versus unvaccinated people have not particularly changed. So here's a chart looking at currently the people in ICU by vaccination status. And you see the raw number, 110 unvaccinated versus 16 fully vaccinated. And then when you extrapolate that out as a percentage per 100,000 people, you can see there's a difference there. You do some long division. I know we all love that, but there's a difference of more than 20 between fully vaccinated and unvaccinated people. So that's a number that has remained constant. It shows the huge disparity in terms of who's going to the hospital and your chances of going to ICU. It's very much in the unvaccinated population.
Okay, let's switch gears a little bit here. Some workplaces have had vaccine mandates in place for a month now. More employers are taking similar steps this week. So what influence does the data suggest mandates have had on vaccine rates?
Well, at least originally, it showed that it had a big impact. Now, if you take a look at this chart, this shows the average number of people on a given day getting a first dose in British Columbia. So it goes down for a while through the summertime, but then as soon as the province announced that vaccine card in late August, it spiked right up, went down a little bit, then went back up again once the card took into effect. However, you can see over the past 2 weeks, that number has gone down by quite a bit to a number lower than it was before the vaccine card was announced. Now, part of this is there's just less people now that are willing to get on board with getting the vaccine, no matter what the government says for incentives or disincentives. But we'll see with these new mandates in place for a wide variety of employers whether that number goes back up again.
We'll be watching for sure. And finally, what about the numbers this week overall? What trends are you seeing?
Yeah, and last week was a little bit pessimistic for the province. This week is a little bit better for the overall big picture. The active number of cases in the province down 9%. The rolling average of new cases down as well, 9%. However, you can look at these key charts right here, these metrics that look at the rolling average, the active cases and hospitalizations. We are still not really seeing that sustained downward pressure that we want to see. Certainly the province hoping with these new mandates in place, things might change, but overall it is a slow and not altogether positive outlook right now for British Columbia.
Justin McElroy, thank you. Travelers across the province got an early start to their Thanksgiving long weekend, but after the Labor Day holiday, Janella Hamilton tells us many planned ahead this time around booking their ferry reservations weeks ago. Apologize for that technical issue. We will try to get back to that story later in the newscast. Well, scientists have found another strange side effect of climate change. Coming up, why the Earth is losing its shine.
In this situation on the west, we ran through at least like 2 or 3 generators. You get frustrated and you can't paint that day.
Number 3, baby. Let's do it.
It's just one of those things, I guess. My name's David Dirkatz. I go by Dirks. I'm a graffiti writer and muralist here in Windsor, Ontario, Canada. I specialize in large exterior murals using spray paint. I just like to paint as big as I can. A certain client reached out to me from the West End Neighborhood Renewal Project. They're wanting some mural work done, some graffiti stuff on an abandoned building. I had multiple locations I could have picked, but it spoke to me because it was like literally just in this field and it was like a perfect wall to have like a mural. And I felt like the art would attract more people to the area. It'd make it more welcoming. In this design, they gave me total creative freedom, which is awesome. Like as an artist, so that's all you ever want to hear from clients is that you can just do you and just showcase your art. They wanted something elegant and powerful to represent the West Side. The West End's known for being a little bit more gritty, like a little bit of the rougher part, so they wanted something bold and tough. And yeah, I came up with the two hawk designs. I felt it was a super powerful and striking image for them. I think it represents the West well. When I start out a mural, I usually go up, measure the dimensions of the wall, and then the next step would be like priming. After that, you start kind of like gridding out your proportions, and then from there, you just kind of just delegate a spot that you want to invest your time into, and then kind of build from that. Can control comes in over a span of like years. Can control is one of those things where you don't just get it overnight. It takes years and years of painting pieces, doing like hundreds of hand styles of graffiti and developing that skill. But once you kind of get it, you can refine it and you can apply it to different techniques of like your mural work. So like I started in graffiti, and that really helped me how I produce my murals now, and how I get all my like photorealism effects is through like my roots in graffiti, getting so used to holding the can and holding it at different angles and seeing different outputs. When I paint, it gives me like that outlet, a lot of creative freedom. You're not just sitting behind a desk like with a pencil, just using your wrist. Like you're using your whole body to use these dynamic strokes, and you're involved with the wall, you're engaged. And my process is just, you just throw on some good music and you just vibe out and you just kind of express yourself on the wall.
Let me hear you say, hey!
Scientists in Halifax have recovered a treasure trove of research data. Paul Withers tells us it's a camera that was once attached to a seal off Nova Scotia.
Look at that, it's gorgeous.
Federal fisheries biologist Damien Lidgard is still going through 19 hours of video he thought he'd never see.
It's, it's disappointing, but we basically say, okay, we've lost this piece of instrument.
Video from this camera attached to a male gray seal on Sable Island on New Year's Eve 2017 that very quickly went missing.
The next 3 or 4 weeks, every single day, I searched Sable looking for that male and never found him.
But what was lost was found. The camera scooped up from the seafloor by a Clearwater surf clam vessel fishing on Bankero Bank and brought back to shore by a crewman.
And I was absolutely shocked.
Lidgard is part of an ocean tracking network gray seal research project studying where they go and what they eat. He sent the $10,000 device to its Australian manufacturer.
The camera worked remarkably well and managed to keep that data for 3.5 years for me to be able to access it.
Lidgard got the video a couple of weeks ago. It shows the male foraging, following female seals at the surface in high-resolution color. In addition to the camera, it also records deep dive data, temperature, light, and acceleration. The video is still being checked for one of the more remarkable behaviors revealed by other seal cams off Sable, that seals sleep on the ocean floor, rolling on the bottom with the current. Video providing an insight not available from other sensors.
The dive profile of a sleeping seal is like a U shape. The seal goes down to the bottom, spends time at the bottom, and then comes up to the surface. Well, that is a remarkably similar dive profile to a foraging seal. So without video, you can't say if the seal is foraging or if the seal is sleeping. But now we can, based on this video footage.
As for the camera, it still works and is on its way back to Canada, where it will be attached to another gray seal from the Sable Island colony next month, this time to a female that will return to shore to give birth, making retrieving the data this time a whole lot easier. Paul Withers, CBC News, Halifax.
Okay, let's get back to that story about long weekend travel across BC. Janella Hamilton was out and about today, catching up with people trying to get away.
Long lines of cars are not an unusual sight at the Tsawwassen Ferry Terminal, especially ahead of a long weekend. BC Ferries says the Thanksgiving weekend is one of its busiest, with thousands of travelers coming to and from the island.
We're actually meeting up with a group of families, 5 families, and it's the first time we've seen each other or kind of been together in the last 2 years, so really excited for that.
BC Ferries says this weekend is one of the busiest for travelers to and from the island. I spoke to many people who are waiting in line for their turn to board. A lot of them saying that they learned the hard way and made a reservation this time.
Definitely reserved. Long weekends are always busy from what we've seen and heard, so we've got a reservation and didn't want to take that risk.
Yes, we reserved ahead of time, and actually there wasn't a lot of space.
It only takes once and then you're done, and then you always reserve.
This was the only boat available. I booked it about a week and a half ago. It was the only one available, 12:45.
BC Ferries says 75% of its bookable sailings are for reservations, leaving limited space for those who arrive at the terminal without a reservation. And it says the terminals themselves are going to be packed. That's because its Spirit of Vancouver ferry from Tsawwassen to Swartz Bay was canceled due to mechanical issues.
It is a slightly smaller ship, so capacity is reduced, but we have a modified schedule and we've got that vessel, the Coastal Renaissance, running in the Spirit of Vancouver Island's place. But with that capacity difference, people will notice that it is certainly busier at the terminals.
Backups are also expected along the Coquihalla as people travel out of the Lower Mainland. And if you are heading up to the Okanagan area, prepare for some winter conditions.
Environment Canada is saying our highest passes can expect to see up to 10 to 15 centimeters through the long weekend. So
Cousins says winter tires are now required for all vehicles when traveling on mountain passes. So wherever you're heading, plan ahead, check the roads, and leave early. Janella Hamilton, CBC News, Tsawwassen.
Okay, and Johanna, we talked yesterday about both of us baking a pecan pie. I want to know if this is really happening on your end.
It's really happening. Yeah, I've got the ingredients. Husband just came home with them, so I'm on. And you're still on, right?
I was thinking about bailing, but I guess I can't now. So,
I mean,
I'll
no
let you
pressure.
know how it goes on Monday. I'll let you know how it goes.
Okay. All right. I'm still going to bring my A game for baking. And no matter what you're baking or cooking this weekend, there's some good walking it off weather Sunday into Monday. So indulgences welcome. Talking about that snow and the need to prepare ahead, I want to take you to those special weather statements I was mentioning earlier for the mountain passes, 10 to 15 centimeters. It'll start Saturday evening for the Coquihalla, spreading eastward as we head into Sunday morning. So the summit's definitely getting a good amount of snow, but snow levels down around 1,000 1,200 meters for the interior. So frost on the ground if you are traveling eastward as well. That's thanks to the clear nights. And then this system that's coming down from the northwest, bringing rain to Haida Gwaii central coastal sections as we speak. I love it when you can see our entire long weekend forecast laid out for us in the satellite. So systems are coming at us from the west. So Friday was a gorgeous day. That'll remain a lovely day for the Kootenays in the interior tomorrow. Saturday's system, that's what's sliding down. It's going to be wet all day tomorrow before Sunday afternoon into Monday. Looks lovely again. So a nice bookended sunshine weekend. Here's the timing of that front. We'll start to see showers tomorrow morning for Metro Vancouver, ramping up to rain for the second half of the day. So don't be lured into a false sense of, oh, it's just a few showers tomorrow morning. It's definitely going to get heavier and windier as that front rolls through. I'm taking you through Sunday morning right now. Lingering showers and very gusty winds for Sunday morning. We're seeing those showers track across to the interior for Saturday. Kelowna, look for those showers Saturday afternoon. Cranbrook, you won't see the showers until your Sunday. And Prince George, you've got them for your Saturday as well. But this forecast will look very different on Sunday, sort of a reversal. Everyone who's got the rain icon, you'll get the sun. And everyone who's got the sun, you'll get the rain. Quick look at how much rain we're expecting. The yellows there, that's the 40 to 60 millimeter bullseye. So generally 20 to 40 for Metro Vancouver. It is a very wet Saturday though, and cool too. 12s for Sunday through Monday. So it's crisp. Watch those overnight lows to cool start But whether you bake a pecan pie or just congratulate the winner and bow out, there's something for everyone this weekend.
Hey, I didn't say I was giving up yet. I was almost going to.
I know.
But yeah,
I
we'll see.
appreciate the honesty.
Okay, and Joe, I know you've been looking into this. Scientists have found yet another strange impact of a warming world.
Yeah, this was a surprising one for me too. Turns out Earth is dimming due to climate change. Take a look at how and why we're losing our shine.
That is so cool.
The moon, waning, waxing, full or new, visible to us in its many forms because of something called earthshine. That's the light reflected from Earth that illuminates the surface of the moon. And according to a new peer-reviewed study, it turns out our earthshine is getting dimmer because of climate change. Researchers used decades of measurements of earthshine, as well as satellite measurements, to find out that there has been a significant drop in Earth's reflectance, or albedo, over the past 2 decades. The Earth is now reflecting about half a watt less light per square meter than it was 20 years ago, with most of the drop happening in just the last 3 years. To put that into perspective, Earth reflects about 30% of the sunlight that shines on it, and that number has dropped 0.5%. Researchers at New Jersey Institute of Technology looked at earthshine data from the Big Bear Solar Observatory in Southern California from 1998 to 2017, and the dimming trend was clear. Now to get to the why. Well, 2 things affect the net sunlight reaching Earth: the sun's brightness and the planet's reflectivity. The observed changes didn't correlate with periodic changes in the sun's brightness, so that means the changes we're seeing are caused by something on Earth, and that something is clouds. In recent years, there has been a reduction of bright, reflective, low-lying clouds over the eastern Pacific Ocean, according to satellite measurements. That's the same area off the west coast of North and South America where increases in sea surface temperatures have been recorded with connections to global climate change. The less clouds to reflect the sunlight, the more heat gets absorbed by the ocean. For some time, many scientists had hoped that a warmer Earth might actually lead to more clouds with more moisture and higher albedo or reflectivity, which would then help moderate some of the warming and balance the climate system. But this shows the opposite is true. But you can't manage what you can't measure. And now we know climate change is dimming Earth. And now you're Science Smart. If you have a science question on your mind, send me a tweet. I'll try to get it answered.
2 journalists have been awarded this year's Nobel Peace Prize. The pair are from very different nations, but as Briar Stewart shows us, they are sharing a passion for free press in countries where that can have severe consequences.
In front of Moscow's Novaya Gazeta, a memorial garden for Anna Politkovskaya, an investigative reporter whose murder remains unsolved 15 years on. I'm dedicating this award to Anna, Dmitry Muratov said, along with 5 others who worked at the paper and have been killed since it was founded in 1993. Back then, another Nobel winner, former Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev, used his prize money to set up the fledgling publication. Today, the Nobel Committee recognized Muratov, the paper's longtime editor. Muratov was so wrapped up in his work that he didn't answer the seemingly random calls he was getting from Norway to inform him he won. But when he heard the news, the celebration followed. Among the many congratulations today came one from the Kremlin. The spokesperson commended Muratov for being brave, which is of course highly ironic, given that there's an increasingly punishing crackdown on media in this country. For Novaya Gazeta's reporters, they hope the award can shield them at least temporarily.
Maybe it will protect us for a little bit, because it's just too weird to close the newspaper whose editor-in-chief is a Nobel Prize winner.
This year, the award also went to Maria Reza, who faced threats and jail time for her coverage of corruption and violence in the Philippines.
This is my 35th year as a journalist, and imagine the Philippine government filed 10 arrest warrants against me in less than 2 years. I've never lived through anything like that.
Reza says despite the risk, there's no better time to be a journalist because so much is at stake. But in Russia, Muratov isn't so sure. Today saying he can't encourage young people to get into investigative journalism because he fears just where the path could lead. Briar Stewart, CBC News, Moscow.
His guitar was stolen 45 years ago. Coming up, the faraway place where Randy Bachman found his most cherished instrument.
Darian Ajigade only graduated from First Nations University of Canada last year, but he is already back in the classroom, teaching lessons in introductory Cree. But some ideas are still challenging to translate and teach.
If one was to create a translation for reconciliation in Cree, one thing that I heard before was like setting things straight. And one other one that I heard just recently, to take things back, almost saying, to reclaim things.
As a teacher, Ajigade is fighting back against language loss, a lingering impact of residential schools. Many children weren't allowed to speak their traditional languages back then, or never had the chance to learn.
That's what I'm trying to push for, is making sure that we have being able to revitalize our languages, to reclaim our languages, being able to speak within our own communities using our languages, and more so that I can start to teach the younger generations so we have a chance to save our languages.
The 23-year-old from Cowessess First Nation didn't grow up speaking Cree. He started learning when he came to FNU and got inspired.
The teachers here, they get you into the language. They're very good at what they do.
Ajigade is now a teaching assistant for one of his role models. Salmon Rat has been teaching Cree at First Nations University since the 1980s. Rat is a residential school survivor who was taken from his home community in Stanley Mission when he was 6 years old.
Before I went to school, I spoke nothing but Cree, and my parents always told us stories, sacred stories, in Cree. And I think this is where my passion for teaching came into place, because I love those stories that my teachers, my parents told me.
Over the past 4 decades of teaching Cree, a lot has changed. Rat says there are now more Cree textbooks, storybooks, and novels. He's written a handful of them himself.
If we are in a Cree-speaking world, then doing immersion is good. But the best we could do in our world right now is, when we're surrounded by English, is to teach the Cree language with as much tools as we can provide for our students.
Both Ajigade and Rat say revitalizing Indigenous languages must be a part of the truth and reconciliation process.
New jobs numbers show a September employment surge. As Nisha Patel reports, that brings total employment back above pre-pandemic levels for the first time.
For many Canadians, back to school also meant back to work for parents. New numbers for September show the jobs market added 157,000 jobs. Economists say it helped hit a milestone.
That brought the total number of Canadians working back to its pre-pandemic level, which, considering where we were, especially last spring, that's really substantial progress.
The tech industry did a lot of hiring, and there was a temporary boost from jobs related to the federal election. Women came back to the workforce in droves. Many had lost jobs or left work during the pandemic due to childcare issues. Now they're being hired in healthcare and education.
Now we're seeing women coming back, and that's great. There's still a long way to go there. We have to roll out that national childcare program. That will be vital in supporting women's full participation.
Still, many employers have complained of a labor shortage, especially for jobs in the services sector. Some economists say it's businesses that must do more.
Push employers to improve the offer. They have to have better wages, more stable hours, better conditions. Then they'll be able to recruit and retain the workers that they need.
This jobs report should give the Bank of Canada room to remove more stimulus from the economy. The governor said he expects to see more jobs gains heading forward, despite any hiring difficulties.
Companies are looking for the right workers, workers are looking for the right jobs, and that process is taking some time.
Amid the hiring, some weakness lingers. The number of workers who've been out of a job for more than 6 months is still high. So while Canada's job market may be back to pre-pandemic levels, there's still work to be done before it's fully healed. Nisha Patel, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, it might be the most unique piece of BC real estate on the market today, but the castle hidden in the forests along the Shuswap River isn't quite fit for royalty. Still, this 3,200 square foot home comes complete with a moat and a drawbridge. Who doesn't need that? The house used to be a church before undergoing extensive renovations that started in 2018. The owners researched 15th century castles to come up with the design. It's decorated in a medieval theme, complete with suits of armor and a cannon, of course. And it can be yours for a cool $3.5 million. That's very rock and roll. And speaking of rock and roll, legend Randy Bachman's very first guitar was stolen from a hotel in Toronto more than 4 decades ago. And after searching for it all of these years, he'll soon be reunited with his prized possession. Karen Paul's on how he found his guitar.
Every day is an endless train.
The guitar in this Bachman-Turner Overdrive song was the first one Randy Bachman ever bought, a 1957 Gretsch 6120, the Chet Atkins model in Western Orange. Bachman says he and Neil Young spent hours drooling over it in the window of a Winnipeg music store while he worked to save up for it.
I babysat, I had a paper route, getting up early in the morning, throwing papers in guys' yards, washed cars.
Bachman performed some big hits on that guitar, but in 1976, it was stolen from a Holiday Inn hotel room in Toronto.
I cried for, literally at night I'd cry. I love this guitar so much.
Bachman spent years and a fortune searching for that guitar, buying up hundreds of them. And then, just recently, someone identified it in this video, shot in a Tokyo restaurant Christmas Eve 2019.
It was like being hit in the face with a shovel. It's like, bam, oh man, my guitar. I was in tears.
His soon-to-be daughter-in-law, Coco, reached out to the musician, Takeshi, who was born the year the guitar was stolen. He offered to make an exchange, the original guitar for another one built in 1957. There are fewer than 40, but Bachman found one in perfect condition.
And they were made basically in the same day or the same week on the same bench and put together at the same time.
In a statement, Takeshi said, "I'm so honored and proud to be the one who can finally return this stolen guitar to its owner, the rock star Mr. Bachman, who was searching for it for nearly half a century. And I feel very grateful for this miracle happening in both our lives." Bachman is now planning a trip to Tokyo to take care of some business, make the exchange with Takeshi, and then perform together. Karen Pauls, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Good ending to that story. Well, the Mi'kmaq Honor Song has been translated into many languages and played and performed for audiences around the world. But a new version is likely going to reach many more ears. It's featured in the new album from renowned American cellist Yo-Yo Ma.
When George Paul composed the Mi'kmaq Honor Song with a drum more than 4 decades ago, he had no idea it would become something of an anthem, sung in multiple languages with a variety of instruments. He's pleased the song has reached so many people.
It's a very powerful message, really. Honor who we are as human family. Help one another. Help one another in the manner that the Creator has given us here upon Mother Earth.
Now that message is being shared with the audience of cello virtuoso Yo-Yo Ma.
Yo-Yo Ma, that takes it to another level.
On the new recording, Ma plays his signature instrument, while operatic tenor Jeremy Dutcher provides the vocals. the Juno Award and Polaris Prize-winning singer, originally from Tobique First Nation in New Brunswick, says the collaboration began nearly 3 years ago when Ma invited him to make a guest appearance at a concert in Montreal.
I had like photo shoots and like some interviews booked that weekend, and I just had to say, well, sorry, you're gonna have to postpone a couple of those because this is a collaboration of a lifetime, you know?
Dutcher had sung the honor song many times before, but usually in his language, Wolastoqey. For Ma's album, he recorded the opening verse in Mi'kmaq as a sign of respect to the original and its composer.
Because I knew that any collaboration with somebody like Yo-Yo Ma, that song is going to go out and it's going to have a life of its own outside of who I am as an artist, right? Mm-hmm. So even though it was still important for me to include Wolastoqey language in that song, which is the second verse, I wanted to start with the original. I wanted to start with the Mi'kmaq.
Dutcher says he hopes this song won't be the last that he and Ma record together. He might even ask the cellist to make an appearance on his next album. Taryn Grant, CBC News, Halifax.
Thank you for watching CBC Vancouver News tonight. Hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving long weekend. Zara Premji is back at 11 right after the National.